Welcome back to Art Appreciation Week. I think we're in week 11. It's sad that I don't get to see all of you guys in person, but I thought a lecture would be helpful to just kind of get things back on track and hopefully create some sort of normalcy in the midst of chaos. So I hope you guys are all doing well and that you are safe and that you are healthy and that your family is also safe and healthy. So we'll go ahead and get to it. So the artist that we'll be studying this week is Pablo Picasso and Marc Chagall. So this is a portrait of Pablo Picasso. Any precious? um, this I think was taken in the early 1900s. Um, well, probably a little bit later than that. It's a pretty decent picture. So a couple things about Pablo Picasso. He was born in 1881 and died in 1973. But definitely one of the more modern artists that we've studied so far. The periods that he's most known for is Cubism and Expressionism, and he has a lot of famous works, but probably the most notable by is the Three Musicians, or I guess the most recognizable is the Three Musicians. And a few facts about him. His full name has 23 words, which he got when he was baptized. Apparently, he was a very, very small baby, and he almost died because they thought he was stillborn. And it turns out that he wasn't. His uncle revived him. And he was a co-founder of the Cubism movement, and he also had many lovers. Um, Francois Gillotte, who was 20 years her senior, and Marie Therese Walter. And Marie Therese is one of the most notable lovers that he had, and also one of his primary models. And so, but also Francois Gillotte was also a model for him, and they had two kids. So he was just very interesting in the way of romance. Was not a stranger to the female. So he also invented collage, which I know you guys have all worked. You've all done a collage at some point in your life, whether or not it was in kindergarten with paper mache or before Pinterest was invented when you created your inspiration boards. Um, so yeah, he was the founder of collage. Fun fact. And he is the most prolific painter in human history. He is actually in the Guinness Book of World Records uh, for his painting. So just with the amount that he painted over his lifetime. So this is him. So we'll go ahead and dive into his works. So this is one of his works. It is called The Young. Trying to find the correct pronunciation of it, but we'll butcher it in French. Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. So English title is The Young Ladies of Avignon. The year it was painted was 1907. Um, so a little script about the young women of Avignon. Uh, this is a revolutionary masterpiece. It's considered one of the most influential paintings of the 20th century, as it played a key role in the development of both Cubism and modern art. It was a radical departure from the traditional European painting. Picasso used different styles to depict each figure in the painting, with the head of a woman pulling the curtain in the upper right being the most strictly Cubist element. The painting was controversial not only for its radical style but also for its subjects. It was first exhibited in the public in 1916, and its title was changed to lessen its scandalous impact. So it was originally called The Brothel of Avignon. The artwork depicts five nude females, as you can see, um, who are disconcerted about the confrontation of their manner. Um, and it seems like they are wearing almost like African mask-like heads, which is really interesting, but also showed the foundation of Cubism. Very geometric, um, not extremely detailed, but there was never one focus, never one focal point. whole point of Cubism was to take all points and make them abstract and geometric. So that is the Young Woman of Algiers, or not Algiers, Avignon. This is another piece of his, The Old Guitarist. Um, I love this piece a lot. It was created between 1903 and 1904. Um, and this was painted during his blue period. He went through a period between 1901 and 1904 called the blue period, in which most of his paintings are monochromatic. It was a lot of people think it was brought on by his struggle with poverty, and one of his friends committed suicide, so he went into more of a depressive state. But the portrait displays a bent and flightless man holding up this large guitar close to him. The blue palette adds melancholy and accentuates the tragic and sorrow theme. And yeah, it's very sad. So this is definitely one of his most famous paintings. But I mean, this is quite sad. I mean, look at his face. He's very downtrodden. But you should check out some of the pieces from the blue period. I think he was definitely one of the first people to use um, a singular color in his work. Aside from, if you remember, there was a piece by, I believe it was Monet, who did the umbrellas piece, and that was quite fun, where he just used the blue, which we had in the other slides, if you guys remember. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is his most notable work, The Three Musicians, and yeah, also in the phase Cubism. This is the beginning, I think, of his Cubist style, and this one was created in 1921. So, um, again, with Cubism, you have multiple viewpoints. There's not a singular subject that you focus on, but everyone is within the forefront. So, and this is kind of the second round of Cubism called synthetic Cubism, which is the second movement, which is characterized by an increase in use of color, simpler lines, and shapes. Um, but it looks like cut out paper. It looks like a collage. So, and if you guys ever saw Sesame Street, this is actually one of they used to have art pieces that they would animate and kind of to be used to educate the public. And they actually would animate this and have all the instruments playing at like in certain situations. So yeah, this was one of the first art pieces I knew because of that. But yeah, just let me know what you guys think. This is one of the most renowned pieces of synthetic cubism. Like I said. So, and this is his other one called the Rev, which is English for the dream. This one was created in 1932. And this is a depiction of his lover, Maria Therese Walter. Um, yeah, so a little bit about this painting. Unlike his later mistress, Dora Maar, who Picasso often portrayed as tortured or threatened, Marie Therese was usually blonde, sunny, and bright in his paintings. Um, yeah, she was 22 years old at this time, in which, if I'm thinking correctly, I believe Pablo Picasso was in his mid 50s when he had an affair with Marie Therese, who was 22 years old. So, yeah, you do the math. Um, it equals creepy. So, but interesting fact about this work: it was sold for a private sale for $155 million, which makes it the fifth most expensive painting ever sold in its time. So yeah, which is a little intimidating. It is beautiful though. It is a beautiful work. So just sitting there dreaming. Alrighty, and this, if I can get all of it in one frame, is probably Pablo Picasso's most notable work of all time, which is called Guernica. It was painted in 1937, and I believe I'm pronouncing it correct. Guernica is a town in northern Spain. A little bit about the painting. On April 26, 1937, um, during the Spanish Civil War, Guernica was bombed by Nazi Germany, uh, and the Italian fascist warplanes in the conquest of the Spanish nationalists. So Picasso created the masterpiece in response to the bombing of Guernica. It brought worldwide attention to the Spanish Civil War and is considered one of the most powerful anti-war paintings in history. There have been numerous interpretations of Guernica since its creation, but on the left side of the canvas, a wide-eyed bull stands above a woman grieving over her dead child. In uh, the center is dominated by a horse falling in agony as if it was struck by a wagon. And then under the horse is a dismembered soldier, while towards the right is a frightened female figure which appears to have floated into the room through a window, and also from the right, an awestruck woman staggers toward the center. Um, and then the two dominant elements in the painting, the bull and the horse, are important characters in Spanish culture. So, all in all, the Guernica is the most famous painting of Pablo Picasso and is one of the most brilliant, and is rated by critics as one of the most brilliant artworks ever created. So, that is Pablo Picasso. A little brief review of his works. And if you guys want me to send this to you, to send the slideshow presentation to you, I absolutely can do that. So, next one that we're going to look at is Marc Chagall. He lived from 1887 to 1985, and the period that he was most famous in is Expressionism and Cubism. And probably his most notable work is I in the Village. And he kind of stepped into surrealism as well. And we'll kind of go over some of the surrealists' um, characteristics so that way you can identify it when you go to a museum. And a couple of facts about him. A couple of weird things. He apparently um, ate half a herring a day and was pretty conservative with his clothes, so he painted naked constantly, just so that way he wouldn't get paint or any art supplies on his clothes. And he spoke French, but I guess there's a 6 year period when he lived in New York, and during that time he never wanted to learn how to speak English. He was very, very proud of being French. Uh, and he had some paintings from the time that he was in New York, and they definitely show um, some frustration with New York and its ways. And I think a lot of it probably had to do with the fact that he just didn't understand anybody. Uh, Fun fact: he did get married to one of his muses and the love of his life. I think they were married throughout their entire lives, and they actually have there's a painting that he did about her, and it's called The Promenade. He painted in 1918. So his sweetheart's name is Bella Rosenfeld, and they worked together for most of his life. And it's the painting depicts her floating up in the air. I think I have it maybe in the slides below, but um, kind of showed his absolute fascination for her. The fact that she's just flying away. So love gives you wings, I guess. Alrighty, and his painting The Lovers ended up selling for $1.28.5 million. So consider that any of you who want to be a surrealist painter in this modern era. You could be. You could make tons of money. All right, so this is his most notable work, The Village and I. Um, and a couple things about it. So it is dominated by the image of a green-faced man and a goat staring at each other. How you would paint that, I don't know. And there's a glowing tree in the man's hand of the green face. Um, and it's complemented by several scenes that, like of the goat being milled and collecting horses, and some are upside down, so just daily life, I guess, compared. And then you can see the Russian landscape in the background. And some houses are centered, some houses are upside down. This is the fun part about surrealism, is it definitely takes into the whole point was to test the basically how creative you can get while diving into the unconscious psyche. So it's the early 1900s for you, early 20th century. So, and as the title suggests, I in the village is influenced by Chagall's memories of his homeland and his relationship to it. So, the use of the clearly defined elements, like the little trees, symbolizes the tree of life, and the kind of the whimsical styles that are portrayed in this painting were very groundbreaking at the time. So, and this is another one of his works called The White Crucifixion. It was painted in the year 1938. So, and this is one of his most critically acclaimed masterpieces. So, my personal opinion, I think um, and it is very interesting, but very childlike in some ways. So, it puts on one canvas the suffering of Jesus and the Jewish people. Crucifixion of Jesus is depicted in the center of the painting, um, while violent acts against the Jews, such as burning of the synagogue, um, are kind of surrounding the central scene. You'll see it off to the off to the left. And Jesus is also wearing a prayer shawl, saying implying that the Jewish, um, and thus implying that he is Jewish, and thus connecting his sufferings to that of the Jews. So even though it's called the White Crucifixion, it's pretty dark, um, and is remarkably different from most of Chagall's works, which were pretty lively and imaginative. Um, this one has a lot of dark depictions, a lot of fear. And this is one of his other paintings. This is the birthday, so in which this lady's little lovers floating in the air. So yeah, lots of floating love during this time. So, but like I said, we're like take into account that during Surrealism, the focus was not on the ornate detail, even though there is some details in this. It's the perspective of what you're used to with classic art. is no longer applicable. It's more just about explicitly reciting human emotion onto one piece. Um, and as you can see, there's not, everything is very flat. Um, and so we'll just go back over, look at everybody's pieces. Picasso, and then Chagall. Okay, and here are some examples of Cubism. So keep in mind, Cubism is a 20th century art style, which aims to show um, all visible viewpoints into one frame of a person or subject, and the figures or subjects look like they're made out of cubes or geometric shapes. Okay. And then Expressionism, which is a style of painting in which the artist seeks to express an emotional experience as opposed to a finely detailed piece of art. Um, so it's at this point when artists start painting how they feel as opposed to their representation of reality. And then Surrealism, which I know a couple of weeks ago I showed you guys the Christina Little short on Disney, and that was designed by Salvador Dali, who was probably the most notable surrealist. And these are two of his works that you see to the left. Um, and just keeping in mind that surrealism was also 20th century avant-garde, which sought to realize the creative potential of the unconscious mind. So those are the artists we will be studying this week. Um, please let me know when you turn in your homework which artist is your favorite, um, who you like better, who you liked worse, and which period you find the most intriguing. So I appreciate you